Michael Sarnoski's debut feature, Pig, is quite possibly one of the best films of 2021. It's a film that I'd planned on seeing a couple of months ago at the Melbourne International Film Festival, but due to in-cinema screenings being cancelled as a result of a COVID outbreak here in Melbourne, I was forced to wait a couple of months before I could finally chuck it on. Now, there seems to be a trend of films and film titles revolving around farm animals in the last 18 or so months. From Kelly Reichardt's First Cow to Valdemar Johansson's Lamb, and now Michael Sarnoski's debut feature, Pig. But each one tells a vastly different story and to different avail. Pig is a film that centres on themes of grief and loss, but it is also about acceptance and surviving. It sees a truffle hunter, Robin, played by the unsurprisingly great and enigmatic Nicolas Cage, have his pig companion stolen in the middle of the night while living off-grid in some cabin. This results in him setting out to find his pig with the help of Amir, played by Alex Wolff, who pays Robin for his truffle work. For what it's worth, the premise is deceptively simple, as it plays on audience expectations that Robin will go out on a killing spree until his pig is found. Now, this deception is particularly true given that the man playing Robin is Cage, who audiences almost expect will go on this killing spree comprised of outbursts and sadistic rage, like in Mandy, Color Out of Space, and something like Vengeance, a love story, to name a couple of examples. But the killing never occurs because Sarnoski isn't interested in that aspect of this story. Rather, he's focused on Robin's loss and grief as a catalyst for exploring how sometimes we can't control what happens to us. Sometimes our efforts are in vain, even if we think there is a silver lining at the end of the tunnel. So if you're going into this film expecting some sort of John Wick-esque approach where Nicolas Cage goes out and kills a bunch of people because they took his pig, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's not what this film is about. The closest thing we have to any sort of outburst is Cage kicking the crap out of a yellow Camaro's door. It's a much more subtle performance from him, something that I haven't seen since probably Joe, which he did 7 or 8 years ago. And as an audience member, you can feel the rawness that comes from this performance. There's a level of truth, there's a level of verisimilitude, something that we can all sort of connect with in this loss and grief that the character experiences. And Cage himself talked about how, he channeled his own sort of grief and his own emotions and attachment, to his own cat when thinking about this role and when approaching it. And it didn't really feel like it was actually acting for him, but rather he was just assuming an identity that he was already familiar with. You'd be forgiven for thinking that this film plays out somewhat semi-biographically for Cage, where he sees his own past mistakes and strives to protect and salvage what he actually cares about, but may have ignored in the past. You've got the whole fall from grace type approach, where Robin is this esteemed chef, in a sense Cage is an esteemed actor, who disappeared from the spotlight only to re-emerge out of nowhere and still cook or act like a pro. Heck, one of the characters asserts to Robin that, "I remember a time when your name meant something to people, Robin." This isn't a film that's going to be like that unbearable weight of massive talent where Nicolas Cage literally plays a fictionalized version of himself. And he's even said that he's probably not going to see that film for that reason. But it's hard not to imagine some level of correlation between Cage and the character of Robin. What is especially interesting to note is that Robin isn't just some weirdo who drew the short straw and is now out to exact revenge. But he is, as mentioned, a former renowned chef whose name is uttered like some long-lost legend. He's had his share of fortune, he's mingled with the city folk, and he's lived under the false pretenses of success that capitalism masquerades as, ultimately seeing him swap city lights for green bushland. What this approach allows Sarnoski to do is to paint capitalism as this sort of grotesque construct that can tear down even the most successful people if they aren't willing to adapt to the changing world around them. Pig is one of the most moving films of 2021 and one of the only films of 2021 that has struck multiple emotional chords for me, and is for that reason that I'm giving the film 9 Wilhelms out of 10.